Hello everyone, this is Miss Dunton from 3rd grade talking about Everyday Math, Lesson 6.1 for Grade 3. In this lesson we want kids to be able to describe, identify, and draw points, line segments, rays, and lines. And we also want them to be able to draw and count the diagonals of shapes, or polygons. So in this lesson we're going to be looking at those things. We have some vocabulary words to talk about to help understand. And to make sure kiddos know how to do this. So the first vocabulary word we're going to talk about is line segment. A line segment has a definite start and a definite stop. The definite start and stop are labeled by endpoints, in this case endpoint A and endpoint B. Okay, so each of these is an endpoint. If we want to talk about this line segment, this is line segment AB, and it's just drawn with an A and a B with one straight line across the top of it. We don't have to put the points on the line. We know that just that straight line means line segment. Definite start, definite stop. As for array, which is the next thing we're going to talk about, it has a definite start, but no definite stop. There's going to be other points along the way, in this case point D, but array is just going to keep going and going and going forever. Sort of like if you stand out, you look down the road, and you just keep imagining that road goes on forever. I mean, you know that it stops at some point, but just imagine it keeps going in a straight line. The end of array, I mean there is no real end, but the direction for which direction array is pointing in is indicated by an arrowhead, which is right here. And its array is named by the starting point and by the point closest to the arrowhead. So in this case C and D, and you would draw a line with an arrow indicating the direction of the array. So whichever point is closest to the arrow is the second point on your name, so CD in this case. Next is a line. A line will have points along it, but it's not going to have definitive endpoints because a line just keeps extending. So it would be sort of like if you stood out by your mailbox and you looked in both directions going down the road and you just imagined it kept extending forever. You know, you could plot mailboxes, so you could say your mailbox is E and your neighbor's mailbox is F, but still it's going to continue and continue and continue. If you were to imagine that would continue forever, the direction on one end and the direction on the other are both indicated by arrowheads. That's called a line. And to label that line, you pick a couple of those points or mailboxes, and you would just label it by those. So E and F in this case, E and F, and then the line across the top is going to have arrowheads on either end to indicate that it's a line, different than a line segment, which we talked about up here. And it's just going to keep extending. So if you want to get a clearer idea, you want to be sure to take a look at the how-to videos that go along with this unit. What can you do at home? You can try to help kids understand the difference between points, points here, line segments, lines, and rays. Try to find things to compare them to in your daily lives. Anything standing off on its own could be points. For example, maybe you want to look at rocks in the driveway, or I don't know, chunks of snow, snowballs. Those are all going to be points because they're just off by themselves. You could draw a straight line in the dirt or the snow to connect them. You could even create this activity in your house, with some sand or something. There are your line segments where you draw something from point to point. Those start at one thing, like a rock or something, and end at the next. You could also even use mailboxes. Start at one mailbox and at the next mailbox. You could use those as your points. For your rays, maybe have kids imagine starting on your steps or starting at your mailbox. If you took a walk and just kept going, what would you see? What would that look like? A ray is a line that keeps going in one direction. So it might just be a good conversation piece to help kiddos get the idea of what it is. And then for lines, you want to have them maybe extend their arms and imagine how far they could reach if they just kept going longer and longer and longer. Or talk about, use the mailbox, stand at the mailbox, and imagine having them go as far as they can in one direction, as far as they can in the other direction, and that it would just keep going and going and going. That's really the concept of a line. And at the 3rd grade level, we're really just trying to help kiddos get the concept of things. We're just trying to help them get the idea. It's not going to be a perfect understanding at this level. It's really more of an introduction, so that when they're exposed to this material again later, it's a little easier for them to understand. There is one other thing that we cover at this level, and that is you have a polygon, which is basically a shape. You could have a triangle, you could have a square. Okay, in this case over here, I've drawn a hexagon with 6 sides to demonstrate, and we're looking at the diagonals in polygons. And so with that, we want to see how we can split polygons in half using their diagonals. This is pretty tricky for kiddos too. They might be able to split it, but it might not be in half, or they might not be able to count them, because once you start counting the lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they might want to count 7, 8, 9, but really these lines have already been counted. They might not be able to find all the lines. Maybe they can connect the corners here, but they might not think to connect the middles to create diagonals that way. So there's lots of conversations, activities you could do with kiddos with this. Just find some shapes around the house and count the diagonals, or draw some shapes for them and talk about where they're seeing the splits. Feel free to bring any questions to the teacher, and don't ever hesitate to ask. So this is Everyday Math lesson 6.1 with Miss Dunton in grade 3.